Hey, welcome back to another video. I'm Ivan Calderon, and today we're doing a beat breakdown. Okay, so we're officially on day 12 of the Stuck at Home Beat Challenge, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, make sure to check this video up here. In any case, for this week, you guys have requested that I break down the reggaeton beat titled De Lejos, which literally translates to from afar, so without further ado, let's jump right in. Alright, so before we even get started, let me go ahead and play this beat for you. Okay, so I started this beat out with a pluck. Now the pluck that I played and that I chose is this one here. Now, the thing to notice is that I am playing the triad chord with my right hand, and that's coming in on the upbeat. So 1 and 2 and I'm playing the bass notes with my left hand, and that comes in on every one. So if we take a look, we got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now this is just a beat breakdown video, but if you want a more in-depth tutorial on how to make reggaeton, I made a video on it a while back. I'm gonna link it up top here for you. But okay, moving on from there, that pluck sounded good, but I wanted to layer it up with a higher pitched pluck just to kind of let it shine a little bit more. So if I play that second pluck for you, it sounds like this. And to get to this point, all I did was I duplicated the MIDI from the first pluck and took off the bass notes. So once I play those two together, we get this. And at first you don't really notice that second one, but when I take it off, you definitely notice. So again, it was just to make it a little bit more interesting. Now once that was set, I went down to the drums just to kind of get that groove going. And I had initially a kick and a snare, and that sounds like this. Now in older school reggaeton, it's more common to see the 2-kick pattern where you have the first kick be a deep tom kick and you have that 1-2 motion. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. For this one, I just stuck with 1 kick, and again, that sounds like this. Moving up from there, and let me just mute the instruments here for a minute, I added in that snare, that accent snare that kind of just adds more bounce and makes it that iconic reggaeton bounce that we know, and that sounds like this. So this is a kick, that's the accent snare, and that's the regular snare. The next element that I added to the drums was a closed hi-hat, and that sounds like this. Now this is playing on the upbeat, and it almost kind of sounds like a shaker, but once I add in the snare and the accent snare, this is what that sounds like together. Add in the kick. Now for the second part of the chorus, I took off the closed hi-hat and I replaced the snare, and I also changed the pattern just slightly. So if I pull in the kick and both snares, here's what it is. I'll play it for you so you can see the difference. First half, second half. Now that snare pattern I literally just took from La Difícil by Bad Bunny. If you notice in the chorus, once he switches up to that second half, it has that exact same snare pattern, so I thought, why not? Now the last few pieces to this drum section included a crash in the beginning here. We also had a reverse cymbal swell, an airy crash, and then of course the bass. So the drums all together for the chorus sound like this. And again, the hi-hat drops out the close hat on the second half, and we get a second snare with a slightly different pattern. But okay, if we bring in the plucks that we had from before, this is what we have so far. But okay, moving back up to the instruments, once I was here, I realized that I wanted my plucks to have more of an ambient kind of open sound. So what I did was I looked for a third pluck, and this one kind of sounds more like a bell, duplicated the MIDI from the second pluck, the high pluck, and we get this. So once you combine it with these other two plucks that I had, the final pluck is this. If I take out the bells, you notice that something is definitely missing. And with it, it just sounds a little bit more interesting. Now, if you were to play the beat as it is right now with these instruments and these drums, this is what we would get. Now that sounds good, and if you wanted to, you could just leave it like this. However, I decided that I wanted to add some supporting instruments just to kind of make it sound a little bit more full. Okay, so the first instrument that I added after this was a piano, and that sounds like this. It's playing the exact same chords from the pluck, but now I have them playing obviously starting at the 1. From there, I added a soft pad and a more gritty pad. That soft pad sounds like this, and the gritty pad sounds like this. So together, with those two pads and the piano, we get the supporting instruments. Now, if I were to play all the instruments like I have them now, this is what the chorus sounds like. Very full, very rich. And if I take them out, it still sounds good, but not as interesting. Finally, the last instrument in this section were some bells, the lead, and they sound like this. Now to create the pattern for the lead, this is what I did. I took the MIDI down from the piano, duplicated it down here. I raised it 1 octave. And then what I'm basically playing is the bottom note and the top note of the first chord, and then the top note of the second chord, and the same thing for the third and fourth. So the pattern is this. Now to create the arrangement that we had in the end, I took the notes that we had and I shortened the length down to about this here. I believe this is an 8th note. I left the first one on the 1, but the other 3 I left on the upbeat. So we get 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then just to give the last 2 notes an accent, I kept the top 2 notes of the chord and I just deleted the bottom one instead of just leaving 1. So again, this is what we get. So then if we play the entire beat from the chorus, this is what we get. Now this is not an arrangement video, but I do want to talk about the intro and the verse just a little bit because they do include some sounds that I left out of the chorus. Now if you take a look for the intro, I had only the low and the high pluck, but then I also introduced a new instrument, which was this guitar here. And it's playing the exact same notes from everything else, but obviously now we're playing them in 3s. And it also has a little bit of delay. Next, I added a low synth bass, playing the exact same notes. So together, the intro sounds like this. Now, if you notice, the muted guitar and that synth bass are absent from the chorus, and that's simply because I had too many things going on. I already had the supporting instruments, which was the piano, the pads, and then the 3 plucks, plus the lead, so having that in there would have been just way too much. So then what I did was I reserved the muted guitar for the verse, and then once the verse drops, what I also did was I took out the 3rd pluck, which was the bell pluck, and the 2nd pad, that gritty pad, so that transition sounds like this. immediately you know that you're in a different section of the song because some elements are missing and new ones have been introduced. Finally, I re-added that synth bass back in the middle of the verse here somewhere. I took out the regular bass that I had going on, I took out the kick, and I rearranged the snare pattern just a little bit so that section sounds like this. And then it jumps right back into the regular verse. Now, before we sign off, I do want to give a shout out to two people who have been creating and keeping up with me consistently throughout this Stuck at Home Beat Challenge. And for this week, that is 1L So Unique and Mortal.SoundCloud on Instagram. So huge shout out to you. Check out some of these beats that they've made this week.
Stuck at Home Beat Challenge. One beat a day. Yeah.
But that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, like this video if you like to, subscribe if you're not already. But I'll see you on the next one.